They thought they'd seen it all, but the war kept secrets deeper than bunkers. From frozen cities hiding gold to submarines carrying ancient relics, World War II was more than blood and fire. It was a treasure hunt beneath the chaos. Some discoveries were pure luck. Others were buried by fear. And even today, the ground in Europe still whispers stories no one was supposed to hear. Fact 1. The Nazi time capsule beneath a school. In 2016, workers in Poland cracked open a concrete vault beneath a former Nazi training school, sealed since 1934. Inside, swastika flags, photographs of Hitler smiling, and newspapers announcing the dawn of the new Germany. The air inside hadn't been touched in 82 years. It wasn't gold or weapons, it was something stranger. Belief, perfectly preserved. Historians said it felt like stepping into a sermon that never ended. The capsule wasn't about memory, it was about control. A message meant to outlive the war. And somehow, it almost did. Fact 2. The ghost army that fooled Hitler. They weren't real soldiers, they were artists, painters, actors, sound engineers, even fashion designers recruited by the US Army to create a fake army that would fight with inflatable tanks and recorded sound effects. Their mission? Deceive the Nazis about Allied troop movements. And it worked. Entire German divisions were misled by rubber armor and speakers blasting tank sounds through the night. The Ghost Army saved thousands, but their story stayed classified for 50 years. Their greatest weapon wasn't firepower, it was imagination. Fact 3. The Amber Room's disappearance. It was called the eighth wonder of the world, a glowing chamber made of gold and amber panels, stolen by the Nazis from Russia in 1941. When Königsberg fell in 1945, it vanished, gone like a dream at dawn. Some say it burned, others whisper it lies deep in a mine or sunken beneath the Baltic Sea. Divers, treasure hunters, even ex-KGB agents have chased it for decades. The war ended, but the Amber Room never came home. A masterpiece swallowed by history's fog, still glittering somewhere in the dark. Fact 4. The submarine full of uranium. In May 1945, as Germany crumbled, a U-boat named U-234 slipped quietly across the Atlantic, bound for Japan. Its cargo? Nearly half a ton of uranium oxide. Enough material to change the course of history. The crew carried jet parts, blueprints, even 2 Japanese officers. But when news of Germany's surrender reached them, the captain faced a choice: deliver the cargo to Tokyo or surrender to the Americans. He chose the latter. The uranium was seized and quietly shipped to the US, where some historians believe it found its way into the Manhattan Project. The war ended weeks later, with a blinding light over Hiroshima. Fact 5. The secret caves of Austria. Deep in the Austrian Alps, American troops stumbled upon something that felt more like a legend than a battlefield. The Altaussee salt mines, vast underground tunnels filled with stolen art. Paintings by Michelangelo, Vermeer and Da Vinci, stacked beside crates marked with swastikas. Hitler had planned to display them in his Führer Museum, a grand gallery of stolen beauty. But before retreating, the Nazis wired the caves with explosives to destroy everything. Local miners defied orders, sealed the entrances, and saved over 6,500 masterpieces. They weren't soldiers, but they protected the soul of Europe. Fact 6. The Frozen Army Beneath the Ice. In 1942, a German supply convoy vanished in Greenland's brutal ice. Decades later, explorers uncovered the wrecks, perfectly preserved, engines intact, weapons still strapped to sleds. The cold had frozen time itself. Letters were found inside one cabin, still legible, a soldier writing to his wife about the endless white. It wasn't just a lost patrol. It was a reminder of how vast and merciless the war really was. No front lines, no glory, just silence, wind, and men swallowed by the cold. The ice had become their grave and their monument. Fact 7. The diary buried in the rubble. In the ruins of Warsaw, beneath a collapsed apartment, workers in 1950 found a metal box. Inside, the diary of a 14-year-old girl named Rutka, a Polish Jew who wrote of fear, hunger, and the fading sound of church bells. Her last entry ended mid-sentence. For decades, the pages sat forgotten in a city archive until a historian opened them again, and suddenly her voice was alive, raw, untouched by time. Unlike Anne Frank's diary, Rutger's wasn't meant to be read by the world. It was a whisper buried under dust, proof that even silence can survive war. Fact 8. The secret chamber in a castle wall. In 1945, as Allied troops took southern Germany, they searched a medieval castle once used by SS officers. Behind one cracked wall, they found a hidden chamber, filled not with treasure, but with personal files, names, photographs, handwritten notes. It was an archive of terror, listing people sentenced to death or forced labor. The soldiers stood quietly, realizing they were holding the paper anatomy of genocide. Those folders later became key evidence at Nuremberg. A single castle wall had been holding the ghosts of thousands. Fact 9. The American pilot who vanished twice. Lieutenant Charlie Brown's bomber was shredded by German fire over Germany in 1943. Barely alive, he saw a German fighter pull alongside, ready to finish them off. But instead, the Luftwaffe pilot, Franz Stiegler, saluted and escorted them to safety, refusing to shoot. Both men survived the war, then disappeared into history. Half a century later, they met again. Old men, crying in each other's arms. Stiegler said, "I couldn't shoot. They were too brave." The war created monsters, but sometimes it revealed men instead. Fact 10. The Japanese submarine lost under victory. Just weeks after Japan's surrender, the US Navy captured several massive Japanese submarines. The I-400 class, capable of carrying bombers inside their hulls. They were engineering marvels decades ahead of their time. But America didn't keep them. They sank them, quietly, deliberately, off the coast of Hawaii to keep Soviet eyes away. For 60 years they rested under miles of ocean, forgotten. When divers rediscovered them in 2005, their metal frames were still intact, like time machines from a war that never wanted to end. Fact 11. The room that heard everything. In a London hotel, beneath ordinary wallpaper, renovation workers once discovered a hidden panel. Behind it, microphones wired into the walls. During World War II, the building had quietly hosted captured German officers. The British had turned entire rooms into secret listening chambers, eavesdropping as generals gossiped, boasted, or broke down over brandy. They learned about U-boat codes, rocket plans, even betrayals inside the Nazi command. The irony, many of those officers thought they were being treated with respect, not realizing every polite dinner was an interrogation in disguise. Fact 12. The hidden code in a music sheet. In 1943, a symphony composer in Paris smuggled information for the resistance using music. Each note and rest followed a cipher pattern, troop numbers, train routes, and dates of German transports. To the occupiers, it was just a gentle waltz. To the resistance, it was survival disguised as art. The coded sheets passed through checkpoints under soldiers' noses, performed in halls filled with officers, while the melody itself whispered rebellion. After the war, those scores were found in a dusty drawer, proof that courage can sound like beauty. Fact 13. The bunker of broken promises. In the forests near Berlin, Allied teams uncovered a secret Nazi bunker, untouched since 1945. Inside were children's toys, propaganda posters, and ration boxes stacked beside crates labeled "Final Victory." It wasn't a military site. It was meant for propaganda films, a fake shelter to show civilians that the Reich cared. But no one ever filmed there. The walls were unfinished, the toys still wrapped. The illusion collapsed before the cameras could roll. It was a theatre of lies, abandoned by its own actors. Fact 14. The tank buried in a field. In 2011, a farmer in northern Poland hit something hard while ploughing. It wasn't a rock, it was a Soviet T-34 tank, buried upright, turret first, like it had sunk into the earth mid-charge. Inside, the gauges were intact, the seats rusted, the radio still there. Locals remembered that winter of 1945, the retreating troops, the chaos, the frozen mud. Nobody had seen it disappear. The war had swallowed it whole, and the land simply grew over the wound. Fact 15. The Nazi bell that defied gravity. Among the strangest relics of the Reich was something whispered about in secret. Die Glocke, the bell, a metallic bell-shaped device reportedly tested in the mountains of Silesia, glowing, humming, said to bend light and time itself. Documents suggest it was part of a desperate push for a miracle weapon. Witnessing described scientists dying mysteriously, entire facilities sealed by SS guards. When the war ended, the bell vanished, along with every record of it. Some say it was a hoax, others think it was taken west, the first step towards something far beyond the war itself. Fact 16. The soldier who slept through the war's end. In 1945, a Japanese soldier named Hiru Onoda was stationed in the Philippine jungle, ordered never to surrender. When Japan capitulated, no one told him. For nearly 30 years he lived in the forest, convinced the war was still on. He patched his uniform, guarded his rifle, and hid from enemy propaganda. Only in 1974, when his former commander was flown in, aged and grey, did Onoda finally believe it was over. He handed over his sword, still sharp. The war had ended decades ago, but in his mind, it had never stopped. Fact 17. The hospital that time forgot. In the forests of Ukraine, explorers in the early 2000s found a field hospital frozen in time. Beds still lined the rooms, boots under them, bottles labelled in German script. In the operating theatre, a table with instruments laid out, waiting for a patient who never came. Soviet troops had overrun the area so suddenly that the doctors fled mid-operation. Everything, even a cigarette still half-burned in an ashtray, remained as it was that day in 1944. It wasn't just a ruin. It was the moment war became silence. Fact 18. The prisoner's letter in a wall. During the restoration of a building in Leipzig in the 1990s, workers found a crumpled note inside a brick wall. It was written by a Polish forced labourer in 1944, a farewell to his mother. The handwriting was neat, almost calm. If anyone finds this, know that I was here. That single line became his monument. No grave, no medal, just graphite on paper, sealed in stone. History is full of speeches by generals, but it's the whispers like his that never fade. Fact 19. The town that vanished from maps. In the Bavarian hills, there once stood a small village called Fuschelberg, erased after the war. It had housed one of Germany's experimental radar labs, disguised as a farming commune. When the Allies arrived, they found tunnels, laboratories, and strange radar dishes hidden under barns. Every document about the site vanished into Allied archives. The village was quietly removed from maps and absorbed into surrounding land. Only old aerial photos prove it ever existed. A place built for secrecy, then destroyed by it. Fact 20. The ship beneath the sand. In the deserts of Egypt, archaeologists in 2018 found a British fighter plane buried in sand, perfectly preserved. It had crashed in 1942, hundreds of miles from any base. The pilot, young Dennis Copping, tried to walk to safety. His remains were never found. Inside the cockpit, his diary, goggles, and a bent wristwatch, all untouched. The plane looked as if it had just landed and was waiting for orders. Time had covered it gently, like a blanket. In a war of noise and fire, this was one man's quiet end, and one of the desert's rarest graves. Fact 21. The enigma trawled from silence. Off the Baltic coast, a fishing crew hauled up something that wasn't fish, a barnacled typewriter from another world. It was an Enigma machine, its keys welded by salt, its rotors still nestled like clockwork secrets. Divers later said it felt like lifting a whisper. In the 1940s, these boxes turned sentences into darkness and set men chasing ghosts across the sea. Codebreakers cracked them, and the war bent. Decades passed, storms came and went, and the enigma slept in cold green light, until chance tugged it back to air. The letters on the keys were still legible. You could almost see a gloved hand hesitating over them, one last message never sent. The sea had kept a confession, and then, without ceremony, returned it. Fact 22. The seeds that refused to die. In besieged Leningrad, scientists guarded a vault of food crops, rice, wheat, potatoes, a library of life. They were starving, but they would not touch a single seed. When the city finally breathed again, people opened the Institute's rooms and found men at their desks, thin as paper, notebooks neat, seed bags labeled by hand. Years later, those same varieties helped replant fields torn by war. No parades, no speeches, just simple envelopes filled with future harvests. The discovery wasn't dramatic, it was stubborn, quiet survival in a century that worshipped firepower. A handful of seeds outlasted tanks. Sometimes the greatest rescue isn't a daring raid or a buried treasure. Sometimes it's the decision to keep tomorrow alive, even when today is unbearable. War buries many things: metal, paper, lies. But it also leaves behind proof that people tried to save what mattered. If these relics survived the noise, imagine what else still waits in the quiet.